welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my June reading wrap up. So I'm going to be talking about all the books that I managed to finish in the month of June. And just for the stats, I managed to finish 8 books in total, which was just over 3,250 pages, which I'm super happy about, especially taking into account that in May I was fighting a reading slump. So now in June that I managed to finish 8 books, I'm super happy with this result. Also, if you follow my channel, you probably know that in June my sister chose 4 out of the 8 books that I read for me to read, and I'm gonna be talking about them as well to see if we have kind of similar taste in books. So without further ado, let's get to it. So the first book that I managed to finish in June was Little Black Lies by Sharon Bolton. So that was one of the books that my sister recommended to me. This is essentially a murder mystery novel set in the Falkland Islands, so just off the coast of Argentina, but this is still a part of British territory. On this island, little boys start to disappear. In this book we follow 3 different perspectives. We have Catherine's perspective, Colm's perspective, and Rachel's perspective. Catherine has been best friends with Rachel up until 2 years earlier, when Rachel was responsible for the death of Catherine's sons. So we follow these 3 characters, and there is a mystery going on the island. To be honest, the plot sounds very simple and not very original. It's just a murder mystery set on a dark, gloomy island. I've seen that before, but what is amazing about this book is, first of all, the ending, because the thing that is being revealed at the end is just mind-blowing. I really never saw it coming, and I really appreciate how the plot got resolved. So I really like that. But I also really enjoy the setting of the story. Not many books are set in the Falkland Islands. Obviously they are not a massive part of the world, but it's still important, and it's nice and refreshing to see a book or a story set in a completely different part of the world. I really enjoy that. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It was really interesting. I really flew through it, and it was very environmental. Definitely made you feel like you were in there. And I think the atmosphere of the islands and also of like a small community was captured really well in this story. And as I mentioned, the reveal was just amazing. From then I picked up The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary. That was another book recommended by my sister. I was really nervous going into the story. I normally don't tend to pick up romance, and the ones that I do pick up I don't really like most of the time. And obviously this is a contemporary book with romance at its core. So I was really nervous going into it, and I didn't really think that I'm gonna like it, but I was really pleasantly surprised. So I have a dedicated book review for The Flatshare, so I'm gonna link it up here for you guys. But in essence, we are following 2 people who, for various reasons, decide to share a flat, but it's not your ordinary flat share, because Tiffy and Leon sleep in the same bed, but at different times. Tiffy, as a person who works 9 to 5, she's in the house in the evenings and weekends, and then Leon is a night nurse, so he stays in the house during daytime when Tiffy is at work, and it just somehow works. The concept of the story is very much 21st century. I think the whole idea behind it was that London is an extremely expensive city. Everyone struggles in there to make ends meet. In general, I think it was a really good story and a really fun read. I really love the way that the 2 characters communicate with each other. They communicate through post-it notes, and they write these little notes for one another, communicating in that way. So that was really fun, really cute, and I really didn't mind the romance, especially at the beginning when the feelings were just like starting to grow between Tiffy and Leon. I really enjoyed that bit, and then the post-it notes communication was really fun. And also I was really enjoying the side plots, because both of the characters have some kind of side thing going on, so I really enjoyed that one. But I was kind of disappointed with how fast they actually got to meet in person in real life. I would have thought that they would finally get to meet each other at the very end of the book, whereas this moment comes much earlier in the story. So that was a little disappointing, and then from that moment when they actually meet in person, my enjoyment was slightly going down. It just seemed like a regular romance, whereas the originality of the idea was something that I really enjoyed. Still, I think the characters were really well crafted, and I enjoyed the writing style. Reading this book felt like watching a romantic comedy, which is something not many books can do, in my opinion, and I really enjoyed it. It was really uplifting, really cute, really funny. I highly recommend it for all of the people who don't tend to like romance just like I do, to pick this one up, because I was really positively surprised by it. In the end, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished in June was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. So this is already considered a classic dystopian novel. It's one of the top 3 core dystopian novels that were written in the 50s or a bit earlier than that even. So we have Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, we have 1984 by Orwell, and then the final one is Huxley's Brave New World. So I've already read 1984 and now this one. To be honest, I have very similar feelings when it comes to Bradbury's story as I had when I read 1984. The main idea behind this book is that firefighters are no longer people who extinguish fires, but they are the ones burning houses or burning properties or places where they find books, because all kinds of books are strictly forbidden. So people are not allowed to even possess any books, and definitely not read them. What I really enjoyed in this book was how the state and politicians and also mass media control everybody's lives, like every single person's life. They tell you what you can watch or what you can do, what you can't do. It just controls every single aspect of your life. So if you think about this, it's crazy how people can be controlled by the government. But then on the other hand, you see that this book was written over 60 years ago, and some of the things are true and some of the things are actually predicted by these authors ages ago, really. So that is really scary to see the direction that our world is going into. Yeah, I really enjoyed the ideas behind it and in general the vision of the world, but I was really disappointed with the way the story was written, and also the plot was really disappointing for me. This is a really short book. I mean, it's just over 200 pages long, and there is not much plot going on. Or maybe I should say the plot that is happening is super simple and super basic, and there's not much room for us to interpret things for ourselves. And as much as I enjoyed the ideas behind it, I think the execution was really not that great. It's really straightforward said, and the plot is just lacking in imagination and in any kind of excitement. And I had exactly the same feelings and thoughts when it came to 1984. So maybe this is something that the classic dystopians did and the current dystopians are learning from their mistakes. Because even looking at the Hunger Games as an example, the plot is so much more intricate than these classic ones. It was still an enjoyable read. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, but it was just not really anything amazing. Okay, from then I picked up The Invisible Guardian by Dolores Redondo. This book, again, my sister recommended for me, and this was a reread for me. I've already read this first book in the Mistborn Trilogy about 2 years ago, but I didn't really remember anything going into it, so it was a nice surprise still going into it and just really starting fresh. This book is essentially the first book in the trilogy, and we follow Inspector Salazar, who is assigned this case of a serial murders that are happening close to her hometown in the Basque country, which is north part of Spain. I have a dedicated chit-chat style book review for this book up on my channel as well, and it is with Anita, so we decided to buddy read this book together and then we just discussed it. So if you're interested to know our in-depth thoughts, just go and check it out. I'm just gonna link it up here. But I really enjoyed this book. I think the character work is extraordinarily well done. The plot itself is interesting, but even though this book it could be classified as mystery, thriller, the mystery and the murders are not really the main parts of the plot, but the character work on Maya, who's the main character in here. This is what is the most important in this story. It just shows perfectly well how trauma can affect people's lives forever and that you can't really grow out of it. This book also was super environmental and super immersive. The way that nature and just the feeling of a small town again is portrayed in the story was really interesting to read. I honestly felt like I was in the Basque Country and the rain was just constantly pouring on me. Also a big part of this story is the Basque mythology and culture, and I knew nothing about these kind of things going into the story, and you get glimpses of folklore and glimpses of myths thrown at you in every chapter really, and that was super interesting. It was really cool to see something completely different, because normally in the books you have Greek mythology or Norse mythology, and this is something completely different and also very intriguing. I was super interested in learning more about this mythology, so I actually even googled a couple of myths just to read after I finished that book, because it was really amazingly well done, and it really shows that books can tickle people's brains and people's interest towards stuff and just ignite that spark that will lead them to learn more and just discover more of the world. And it's super cool. It's in general, it's just super. I'm really happy when a book can do something like that to me. The only thing that I did not enjoy as much was the very end, which I think was really rushed. I think was really abrupt. Like, we could have had a couple of more chapters just clarifying what happened and there's a resolution of the crimes. Obviously this is the first book in the trilogy, so perhaps there's going to be a bit more revealed in the later books. I really hope so. I'm really interested to find out more about the story and more about the characters. I am really looking forward to picking up the second book in July. Overall, this book was 4 out of 5 stars. It would have been probably 5 out of 5 if it was not for the ending. But yeah, definitely highly recommended. I finally managed to finish Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So this book I started about mid-May. Soon after reaching about 60 or 70 pages, I left it. I couldn't get into the story at all, and then about mid-June I decided, well, it's time to finally pick this one back up and finish it. So I did. And I switched to an audiobook after the 80 or 90 pages of reading it physically, and that was probably the best decision that I could have made when it came to this book. The audiobook was read by a British narrator, and she was just amazing. She did such a great job in bringing the characters to life. I actually started enjoying it much more when I switched to audiobook, so I really was happy, and then I flew through it in like 2 days. In general, this is a classic romance, and we follow 5 Bennet sisters whose mother really wants to marry off all of them because they're not the richest of the families out there. They only have 5 daughters. They want them all to make sure that they have husbands and places to live when the father passes away, because back then women couldn't really inherit the houses and just the wealth of the family. When it came to the plot, I really didn't care for the main plot, sort of, which is really romance heavy. As I said already in this video, I don't read romance that much. But what I really did enjoy in this story was the characters. I thought The characters were hilarious. The dynamics between the Bennet's parents, the father and the mother, it was just hilarious to read. I think in general in Pride and Prejudice, Austen was trying to portray the society and the problems of their time in a very satirical way. So this whole story is basically laughing at the society back then. I think each character represents some specific characteristic of the society that she was trying to make fun of, and then in the way that she wrote that character, she was just really showcasing how ridiculously silly these people were and the societies were back then. I really enjoyed that satirical part, and the characters were really well written, but I really didn't care for the plot, and that's why I gave this book only 3 out of 5 stars. Did I say 3 out of 5 stars? 3 out of 5 stars. Next book that I finished in June was Harry Potter and the Prisoners of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. I finished this book before this massive Twitter storm started because of J.K. Rowling's tweets about transgender women. I don't know if I should be reading any more of her books, because obviously I started my reread of the Harry Potter series, and now I feel like I don't want to pick up any more of her books just because of the person that she turned out to be. And I know some transgender women are not at all offended by her tweet, but there are many more that are, and I just don't want to support this kind of behavior. So I don't know if I'm gonna be continuing with my reread of Harry Potter series. I definitely need to take a break and just distance myself from it. But going back to the book, the 3rd book was absolutely amazing, and I think out of the 3 that I just recently reread, Prisoner of Azkaban is still my favorite. I really like to see how Harry grew and how he's actually getting more teenage-like. He has so much anger in him, and he's just doing a lot of silly things because he doesn't think. I mean, this is a common theme in the whole Harry Potter story. He is provoked by Malfoy really easily, but this story has my probably all-time favorite character in it, and it's Lupin. I love Lupin. He's just such a great character, and I really felt for him when we learned his backstory about how he was mistreated because people didn't understand or didn't even try to understand him as a person because of who he is, and that made me really sad. But also he's just such a caring and loving and really knowledgeable person. I absolutely adore him. But one thing I noticed reading this book again was how little time we actually spent with the time turner at the end. In the books, almost half of the story is taking place when Harry and Hermione go back in time and they just watch the events from the other side. And in the books, it's just the last 2 or 3 chapters maybe, which I was really surprised about, but it worked. Still my favorite of the 3, 5 out of 5. From then I picked up the 2nd book in the Mistborn Trilogy, The Well of Ascension. I really loved it. I know I already said in my mid-year book freakout, The Final Empire, so the 1st book in the series, was my favorite so far of the year, and now probably I can say that it's been dethroned by the 2nd book in the series. The plot kind of had its own arc within the 1st story, and even though this is the 2nd book in the series, this one has a completely different arc than the 1st one. This story is taking place a year after the events of the 1st book, and this story has a very different ring to it. Whereas the 1st book was about this heist, let's say, this book was really very political. I mean, the 1st one was political as well, but this one was extremely political based. So in general, in normal regular fantasies, when it comes to series, you have the big massive fight at the end of the series, and then you have either the good or the bad guys winning, and that's it, the end of story. Whereas in here we have, I don't want to spoil anything, but we follow the aftermath of what happened at the end of the 1st book, and it's so interesting to follow because you don't get to see much of it in any of the other fantasy stories. I mean, maybe in the Lord of the Rings, but obviously in the Lord of the Rings you don't have 2 books spent on that time. So that was super interesting. We got to get back with the characters, which I absolutely loved. The character dynamics is something that I love probably the most out of these stories. I think all of the characters are really well crafted, really fleshed out, but we also get to learn so much more about the world and about the magic, and it's super interesting to follow. I really enjoyed this one, and even though I kind of predicted one of the plot twists that happen in there, or reveals if you will, I still had so much fun following these characters, and oh my god, I can't really wait to read the 3rd book. I can't wait to see how the story will end and what's gonna happen to the characters. I am really in love with the series. I can't even speak anymore. I love it. Go and read it. And then the last book I picked up in June was Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by eddo-lodge. And I read most of it in June, and then I just finished the last about 30 pages on the 1st of July. But I still am gonna count it towards June because it's just most of this I read in June. So this is a non-fiction story about race and the relationship between people of different races, and I think this book would be a really good introduction into, first of all, how to understand race and how to understand people of color in general. This book gives you an overview or like a summary of some aspects of life or some issues that people of color experience in the UK. So this book is written by a British author, so we are set in the UK rather than in America, which most of the books about race are American literature. And I think because a lot of people think that we are not in America, there is no racism in the UK, which is complete rubbish. I think everyone should read that book, for everyone to open their eyes that this is happening and all these experiences are real. And I don't even know how to talk about this too much. I think I definitely recommend this book as a kind of primer or an introduction to race relations in the world, because I think it's really important for people to realize how their actions and how point of view can impact other people. For me, there was not many new information there. There was a chapter about history of slavery and race specifically dedicated to slavery in the UK and the Commonwealth. So that was really interesting because obviously most of the race literature is American and we get just the American kind of point of view. So that was really refreshing. That was something new to me. All the other chapters I kind of knew about, but again it was something really good to refresh it in my memory. And this book basically states that no matter what disadvantages in life you have because of your gender, your class, your sexual identity, nothing ever will be as challenging as being a person of color, because that affects every single person every single day of their life. To put it plainly, it sucks, but obviously the point of this book is not to make us feel sorry or just to pity people of color. No, the point of this book is to highlight these things and for people of every color to fight for equal rights, because the fact that people who are right now diminished, the fact that they will be treated as respectfully as people of other colors, this doesn't mean that you are gonna be treated less respectfully. Just going back to the story overall, I think it was quite well researched because there was a lot of little facts about the history, but the current affairs as well, and just case studies and stuff like this. So I think that was very good. The way it was written, it was really easily read. It's really an accessible read. I know some people were offended or really upset about the title of this book, but to be honest, it was really needed because this buzz that's around it and the controversy when it comes to the title, it really created the buzz around the story, and anything that really can get people to talk about this and read it and educate themselves is a good thing. To me, there wasn't many new information in there, but I still think that it's worth read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay guys, so these are all the books that I wanted to chat with you today. It's been a lot and my voice is gone, but I hope that you lasted through until the very end. Let me know in the comments what books you managed to read in June, and if you're planning to pick up any of the ones that I talked about. Obviously, as always, if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for some more bookish content. Thank you very much for watching again, and I'll see you again with another video soon. Bye!